Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for joining us once again here at Aura News for our daily English news edition. I'm Daniel Cook, your host, presenting a translated version of today's top news stories as prepared by the Aura News journalists. The head of the Albanian emergency staff has blamed the local governments for the floods in the south of the country. Mr. Prenci declared today that the local government structures were given notice beforehand about the intense rainfalls that were coming, and they did not take any preventative action. He announced that a national plan is being drafted for the prevention of floods and other natural disasters, and he expects it to be adopted by the end of October. Meanwhile, to increase the awareness of the responsible institutions, Mr. Prenci has called the prosecution to launch an investigation and find those responsible. Currently, work is being done to normalize this situation in the south, and there are already teams assigned to identify and assess the damage. According to the Ministry of Agriculture, all of the country's western lowlands are at risk of flooding if the rainfall continues. Experts from the ministry explained today that the whole area from Velepoja to Saranda, including Butrint, is at risk. There are about 75,000 hectares of land that have been already pumped, but they are at risk of flooding again if the rain continues. In addition to the damage to houses and infrastructure, the agricultural land will also be damaged by the floods. Earlier this year, the World Bank ran a report on the impact of natural disasters in southeastern Europe, recommending that the Albanian government monitor the weather changes in order to take precautionary measures against disaster. The report stated that disasters resulting from climate changes have had a negative impact on the fragile economies of the region. In Albania, the consequences are perhaps even more severe. This is because the bad weather has the most effect on the agricultural industry, the means by which about 40% of the population makes their living. Also, according to the World Bank, bad weather affects the production of energy, tourism, and slows down the construction throughout the region. Although the World Bank has predicted economic increase of 3% for Albania in 2015, the report called upon policymakers to turn their attention to weather threats such as floods and drought. The residents and traders in Fier are complaining that no one was sent to assess the damage after the heavy flooding this past weekend. The prefect of Fier says that the identification of damage will be finished within a few days and that compensation will be distributed later. Around 500 hectares of agricultural land was flooded in the Fier villages from the intense rainfall in the past few days. In Berat, the floods have damaged the roads and the citizens are asking for the help of the municipality. Flooding in Leja is inevitable this winter, putting hundreds of hectares of agricultural land at risk. According to the emergency staff who held a meeting today in Leja, the floods are being caused by shortage of funds and drainage channels that are blocked or in disrepair. The emergency staff also highlighted that illegal construction projects have damaged the drainage network. On Sunday, the city of Leja flooded in only 2 hours of intense rainfall. Invited as a guest last night on the Aura News program Tonight Ilva Tare, the vice chairman of the justice reform, Eduard Halimi, claimed that the majority's draft aims to control the justice system. "We have a fragile justice system," he said, "and a government that wants to reformat the system only by taking control of it." Rama's statement, "I want the justice system to fight wrongdoers," means that he wants the system in his own hands. He wants to control it, said the Democratic MP, Eduard Halimi. He criticized the interruption of the chief prosecutor's mandate after the reform was approved. "It has never happened in the recent 25 years that a prosecutor general was discharged by law without even giving an analysis of his work," he said. The prosecutor general was not even allowed the right to complain against this ruling. He was not allowed the right to complain to the Constitutional Court because the court has no jurisdiction over the case. This year, the Prosecutor General was denied the right to report to the Law Commission on his own performance, said Mr. Halimi. The reform will get the approval of the opposition only if it is made compatible with the European standards. If it is left as it is now, it will never get the approval of the opposition, said Mr. Halimi. Prime Minister Rama took a one-day trip to the Czech Republic today to meet with the Czech Prime Minister, Mr. Sobotka. The Czech leader gave his assurance that his country supports Albania's integration into the EU and said that the Czech Republic will continue to give the same support that it did for Albania's candidate status. The visit was concluded with the signing of 5 cooperation agreements in tourism, education, social protection, the management of natural disasters, and the protection of the environment. In a joint press conference afterward, the two counterparts expressed the same opinion that the Czech investments in Albania should be increased, even though their fate in some cases was not positive, referring to the CEZ agreement. Prime Minister Sobotka had this to say about Albania's integration path. For the Czech Republic, the integration of the Western Balkan countries into the European Union is an unchanged priority. We supported Albania's candidate status, and we will continue to do so. The Czech Republic supports the efforts of Albania to fulfill the conditions for integration, and we are willing to share our experience and help Albania on its integration path, said Mr. Sobotka. When questioned about the immigration crisis, Prime Minister Rama was somewhat critical of Europe. He said that the immigrant crisis is the result of the lack of a European strategy, adding that perhaps the crisis will help Europe to understand what it needs to do. In continuation of his tour called The Time for the Citizens to Speak, the Democratic chairman Basha met with a group of Korça farmers today to hear their concerns. The farmers asked for a reduction of oil and energy prices and also of a reduction of the price of pesticides. They complained that the difficulty they experience in selling their products is the result of having to compete with the imported products that are dominating the market because they are not being taxed at customs. Mr. Basha told them that the governing program of the Democratic Party will include an increase of funding for the agricultural sector. He said that the Democrats will set a flat rate tax that will be the lowest ever, and that no other tax will be expected of the farmers. In addition, he promised to reduce the oil and energy prices. Mr. Basha is on a tour of meetings with people all around the country in the context of drafting the government program that the Democrats will present in the 2017 elections. The Albanian soprano Ermonela Jaho is returning to the National Theatre of Opera and Ballet, now well known around the world for her success in the Theatre Royal in Madrid and in her performance in Madame Butterfly in Paris. From October 14th to October 18th, Jaho will be part of the panel for a specialization course for the youth. The National Theatre of Opera and Ballet is reserving another surprise for Albania's art lovers. The Albanian soprano Ilva Mula will be coming to the theater for the opera Pagliacci, which was also presented on stage last year. The difference this year is that she will not be taking on a singing role, but rather she will be directing the opera. The National Theatre of Opera and Ballet will not be the only ones presenting new things to the public this year. On October 15th, Albania will be cooperating with Kosovo to bring the play The War at the Time of Love to the Albanian stage, directed by Blerta Nezirai. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks so much again for choosing Aura News as your source for English updates. Please join us again tomorrow at the same time. Thanks, and have a great night.